Good late afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good night, good evening, good morning from and to all over the world. Out of day 3 of Singapore FinTech Festival, World FinTech Festival, Cambodian Hyperlocal channel in Phnom Penh. It is my honor to actually continue in the panel discussion after what Donald presented when it comes to green and sustainable finance. It is actually very hard to squeeze what we are supposed to squeeze in 1 hour, and I've seen that Donald has done an incredible job over a 20-minute session. So before we begin, I would like to welcome our fellow panelists joining also globally, starting with David Totten from Harvest 2. We will have also Artak Melkonyan from UNDP, John McGinley from USAID Green West Asia, and Steve Landman from KU Global, and Pagna Ukthaun, also from UNDP. Gentlemen, I'll briefly introduce the topic, and then we'll head session to you for brief introduction of yourself and topic as well. So today we are supposed to discuss investment showcases, trends, challenges, in green and sustainable finance, impact of finance and financing, social financing, with global outlook, possible outlook on Cambodia and Cambodian roadmap, as well as Southeast Asian outlook. I hope that this next session will be impactful, hopefully emotionally sustainable and memorable session with as little technical glitches as possible. I think that in day 3, we already hopefully figured it out, we can hear each other. And we will be able to have enjoyable next 55 minutes. I still need to figure out my face shield due to COVID restrictions here. So before I will go into topic introduction, gentlemen, would you be okay to give us 1, 2, 3 minutes of your own intro? What do you do, and why actually do you agree after not that long persuasion to join this interesting panel? Maybe let's start with David.
Thanks very much, Thomas. Hi to everybody out there. So I'm representing a USAID project called Harvest 2, and that works primarily in commercializing horticulture value chains in Cambodia. So our objective is to support diversification of the sector in Cambodia and to help investors in those sectors commercialize and scale up. So we work with a variety of sectors to take advantage of emerging opportunities, cashew export, mango export, domestic vegetable markets, pepper and spices, and we also look at enabling factors, infrastructure, logistics, and also enabling technology. So we do work in digital finance, digital supply chain management also. When I'm not working on the Harvest 2 project, I also manage a consulting company called Emerging Markets Consulting. We were founded in the Mekong back in 2004, do most of our work across the Mekong region, but do a significant proportion outside also. So recently, or in recent years, Rwanda, China, Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand, so a variety of other countries. So that's me. Thanks very much. Thomas?
Thank you, David. Mr. Artak, would you give us an honor and introduce briefly about yourself? I think perhaps you might be on mute.
Sorry. Thank you, Tomas. My name is Artak Melkonyan. I work for UNDP SDG Innovative Finance. So it's a special dedicated unit within UNDP, which works on the mission of working with the private sector and trying to bring in the context of SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, in their business decision making. So what we try to do, we try to come up with different impact factored financial instruments which would help both sides, the capital demand side, which means businesses, and also capital supply side, which means funders, investors, the banks, to have those instruments and motivate and nudge the businesses towards impact targeting or sustainable development targeting activities. And since we work throughout the whole range of private sector, from startups to SMEs and corporates and multinationals, we develop those tools for specifically for each of those clusters. And part of those tools also involve FinTech and digital finance, and this is how we are sort of quite relevant to the major event now happening. So it's not only the green finance, it's more sort of what we call an impact factor finance, and also innovative financial tools, including also digital finance tools, which are contributing to the cause. And this is why I'm so glad to be here and to provide the perspective of what's happening globally and what are the developments in the region and how we're supporting them.
Thank you, Artak. Appreciated. John, to you, please.
Great. Hi, thanks, Thomas. Thanks for the invitation. It's nice to be here this afternoon. I am here today also representing a USAID project called Green Invest Asia, which is a regional, I guess they describe it as the climate finance flagship project for landscapes across Asia. So essentially we look at sustainable financing across forestry and agricultural projects across the landscapes of Southeast Asia. Cambodia is a priority in a country in amongst our target countries. We tend to work with lenders and financial institutions and borrowers. So we're a technical assistance project. We look at how do we, what interventions work at a landscape level with a borrower, which can shift their practice as business as usual and can also unlock further financing. So we work with a variety of financial institutions and equity or debt or DFIs and the like, and work through building pipeline for them in sustainable agriculture and forestry projects. We've done several transactions in Cambodia and Indonesia mainly. So within the context of Cambodia, we also have a pretty specific focus around sustainability and green finance. So we have been, as a part of this project and a broader cooperation with the government, launching a new green financing institution for Cambodia, which will look to be a kind of domestic source of green lending to support local green projects in the market. And a part of that are the Cambodian financial institutions, the banks. So we've also, through this project, been training Cambodian banks in particular on environmental, social governance, risk management, and green lending techniques and products to sort of encourage, scale up, and I guess crowd in the local finance sector into green lending as well. So all of this kind of falls under the remit of USAID Green Invest Asia. And, within the FinTech side, there have been a few interventions here and there where there has been, I guess, applicability. So essentially that's us. And it's similar to David, outside of Green Invest Asia, we're also I'm the founder of a investment advisory firm called Mekong Strategic Partners, and we're the implementing partner together with PACT on USA Green Invest Asia. So, so I'm happy to be here and happy to join the discussion and look forward to hearing the other perspectives and any questions which may come our way. Thanks.
Thank you, John. Steve, good afternoon. Brief intro, please.
Sure. Thanks, Thomas, and good afternoon to everyone. My name's Steve Landman, CEO of Q Global. Q Global digitalizes supply chains and SMEs and MSMEs in 6 countries in Southeast Asia. We have Q Cambodia, where we've been operating almost 3 years now. Ultimately, with data we collect through digital tools, we can actually credit score and hopefully get our financial institution partners like AMK in Cambodia to lend money to those SMEs that are part of the supply chains. My background has been technology. I worked at Oracle when it was a startup. I was probably the first company ever to do credit card processing online in 1993. Talk about FinTech. We didn't call it FinTech then. I did mobile merchant payment in about 10 years ago in Kenya. So I've been in the financial tech space for a very long time. Also impact investment. I started a social enterprise. We didn't call it social enterprise then, but or impact investing. This was 12, 15 years ago. So I'm really happy to see that impact investing and social enterprise and ultimately everyone doing good for the world and the planet and the communities has come a long way. So I'm really excited to participate, and I thank you for allowing me to join.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. Panya, can you introduce yourself, please, briefly?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Panya. I am representing UNDP Accelerator Labs, which is a new business unit that UNDP globally has been launching since 2019. Right now, we are about 114 countries globally, and what we are doing, and particularly in Cambodia, as well as my role as the head of exploration, we're looking at the local trends, the abilities to identify the grassroots innovation and local solution, and then scale them either through private sector partnerships or going through the regionals and global partners with our development partners. Currently, the areas that I'm focusing is the majority of my works are going to entrepreneurships and impact investments. So we actually have our own incubation program that we bring young talents in Cambodia, merge them together, team it up, and build the business that hopefully to be investables, but also to create more sustainable jobs to young peoples and Cambodian peoples to come. Besides that, we're also working with a number of initiatives on clean energies and also environmental projects. And I also touched on the public service innovation. And prior to that, I also actually led a social enterprise in water and sanitation. So before I'm doing all of this and corporate innovation, my role was basically selling toilets in the Cambodian countryside. So very happy to be here to discuss and bring some practical experience to share with the panelists as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Panya. Gentlemen, I have a challenge. I'll brief you to the challenge. SDG, ESG, impact finance, financing, sustainability, sustainable finance, greening finance. We can talk pretty much next 5 minutes about terms. Albeit we have subject matter audience for sure watching us today, we also have a big portion of general public. Could we try to clarify some of the terms? Terms such as what actually it is green finance, what it is sustainable finance. We don't have to talk about it too long, but at least we will get basic understanding for our general public and for our viewers to actually understand of something that perhaps alongside of FinTech is big driver towards financial inclusion in general. And so maybe we can start with Artak and just give us a brief overview of key terms you think that people need to understand. And as we will go further next decade, we will be hearing those terms more and more. Artak, hold on. Yep, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Tomas. Definitely, this concept of having sustainability as part of the business created the manifestation of this term green finance, which I will come back later on. But there are also a range of different other sort of terms used and used sometimes interchangeably. We speak about CSR, which stands for corporate social responsibility. We speak about responsible business, sustainable business, ESG, which stands for economic and social governance standards, right, or principles. We speak about impact investment. Sometimes we also refer to something called venture philanthropy, which is not that much related to business. But those are the terms which are, again, people are operating without, unless they are in the industry of very specialized, sort of distinguishing between those concepts. Again, those concepts do not have strict boundaries, but we have certain principles. And let me sort of explain what stands for what. So the first way of doing things is just operate a business as a business. And without caring too much about the such things as sustainability, social aspects, etc. However, because of the certain environment that business is operating with, which has stakeholders, in order to polish the sort of image of business in front of those stakeholders, people look at this concept of corporate social responsibility. So this is where the company spends some money to, let's say, renovate a school, pave the road, build a kindergarten in the community where it operates or from where its employees are, right? In order to again polish the image in front of those people, the government, local authorities, etc. So usually CSR does not have very direct connection with the nature of the business, but it's still a good activity that needs to be praised. Now, the next level of integrating sustainability into the business operations is what we call a responsible business. This is when we speak about set of principles, set of values, if you wish, a set of rules that we are saying, let's comply with those so that we are behaving responsibly. Now, those are pretty simple ones. You know, there's several sets of those principles coming from different organizations, from UN. About, I think, 10, 15 years ago, we came up with something called UN Global Compact Principles. Those are pretty simple. It says, okay, don't cut trees, don't exploit kids, don't discriminate women, etc. But the nature of that is that whenever you do a business activity, what you try to do, you try to have all your business processes compliant with those rules. So basically you tick the boxes saying, okay, my supply chain is complying with those principles. My production is complying with these principles. My sales, my finance, everything, my HR, we try to make sure that we are compliant with that. Now, which is actually much better than CSR, but not enough. Now, the next level is when we speak about sustainable business. Now, here, it's not just about the compliance. Here we are saying, listen, can we operate a business in such a way that we do not create any harm? And if we generate harm, let's do something to compensate that, to offset it. If we cut a tree to build our plant, our factory, let's go and plant 10 more trees so that we are offsetting that damage that was produced. So that's the principle behind this sustainable business concept. And very relevant to that is the concept around ESGs, environmental, social, and governance standards, which looks at specific efforts to be done to make sure that this harm is not happening, harm to the nature, harm to the set of other beneficiaries or stakeholders around the business, which is also good. It's much better than responsible business, but not enough. Now, the next most advanced, I would say, business relevant sustainability concept is impact investment. At that stage, what we are telling is that, listen, it's not enough to say that we are doing something good. What we need to do, we need to define what is that good. We need to parameterize that. And when we need to measure our progress to achieving that target of producing good, producing a benefit. And ideally, when we speak about impact investment in its pure form, we want that target, that impact objective, to be put at the level of our financial, market, or other business targets. But even if impact target is not at that level, it might be a level below, it still is very good because, again, it becomes one of your corporate targets that you are pursuing, and hence you are creating a change throughout your governance structure and try to measure the performance of your people against that specific target. So these are the major sort of areas of what we call sustainability integration into the businesses or into the investments, and there are a set of strategies which are aligned around that. So sort of, and what we as UN try to do, or as UNDP tries doing, is not saying that, okay, CSR is not good, let's go to impact investment. No. What we try to do, we try to nudge the corporates, the business, from one to the other. If they are doing CSR, let's nudge them towards responsible business. If they are doing responsible investments, let's nudge them towards sustainable one. If they are doing sustainable one, let's nudge them further towards impact investment. And when last 5 years, when we speak about this impact, UN came up with this concept of sustainable development goals, which actually changed the understanding of what the impact should be. Now, it's not just a discrete impact, it is an impact which is aligned with these global visionary goals. There are 17 of them, around which all the countries are sort of signed off. And now we are saying that let's think about the impact, the good or that impact objective in the context of contributing towards SDGs, towards the global mission of making the world a better place. So now we are speaking about measuring the outcome of our activities. And one of the major questions that usually are there is people are referring to this concept of what's the difference between ESG and SDG impact. The major difference here is that ESG, in most of the cases, especially on the parameters related to governance and social standards, it measures more efforts rather than the outcome. On environmental standards, we do touch the outcomes as well. However, when we speak about the SDG impact, it's purely about that impact or that result that is produced vis-a-vis the contribution towards that major global development goals. I'll stop here, but if there will be more questions in this regard, ready to elaborate further.
Thank you, Artak. Appreciate it. John, essentially, Artak talked a lot about impact finance and basics of sustainability, ESG, SDG. USAID, Green Invest Asia. You knew that I will throw it to you, that green is there. Can you elaborate a little bit more?
Sure. Sure. Sorry, I just had my camera off somehow. But anyway, I'm back. Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm very happy to. I mean, it's a good question, and understanding the difference is it's important. And I mean, I come out the finance sector, and I look at it through the lens, perhaps, of the perspective of a financial institution or an investor or a bank. So, you know, when I guess to start off, like, you know, perhaps it's helpful for those, you know, who aren't familiar with the term sustainable finance and green lending, you know, from the way I see the definition, you can kind of separate it into two parts. It's really risk management and lending or loan origination. So the way I see it, let's say sustainable finance and ESG lending, or another term for it, is really about risk management. It involves kind of integrating environmental and social risks into lending considerations in order to avoid or mitigate financial losses, reputational risk, or harm to the environment and people, which could be caused by a bank's lending. That's sustainable finance, that's sustainable lending. That's integrating ESG factors. Now, when we talk about green lending, that's really around loan origination. That's a different part. I mean, that's green lending, and that involves lending to and financing businesses that provide benefits, I guess, to or are environmentally friendly and socially responsible. So the outcomes of those lending are green. So sustainable finance to me is kind of often wrapped around risk management, and green lending is about actually the disbursement of finance. It's about, you know, kind of internalizing the externalities and adjusting risk perceptions in order to boost socially and environmentally friendly lending decisions and reduce harmful ones. So at USAID Green Invest Asia, we're really focused on that. So we have targets. You know, we have a green lending target where we try to achieve $400 million worth of green loans, you know, and achieve 25 million tons of greenhouse gas reductions over 5 to 6 years through this project. But we're also looking at the sustainable finance side. So we're looking at the risk management side. So that's an important part of our project. And specifically to focus on Cambodia, we've been very focused on supporting banks understand the risk management side and the ESG side. So we've developed a set of principles with the Cambodian banks through the Bank Association, and we're separating it into, I guess, the ESG, as I said, or the green lending. So that involves training and providing systems and guidance to banks, and also developing capabilities of green lending tools and products, and how do you become familiar with what a green loan is, and developing internal systems. So at Green Invest Asia, we try to define, we focus on both areas, like the green lending outcome, but also helping particularly local banks, because if you look at the international and regional banks that operate across these markets, can be fairly sophisticated and more advanced. It's often the local banks and the local financial institutions that need the most support, and we kind of feel our responsibility is to upskill them and give them the resources they need, so they are not left behind, and they have the capabilities to understand these risks, but also engage in green lending. So that's a kind of priority for us as USA Green Invest Asia in Cambodia. I mean, I'll stop there unless it's further. You want me to elaborate further, Thomas?
Thank you, appreciate it. Steve, actually, John mentioned green lending, green finance, environmentally friendly, environmentally responsible lending. On your side, from a KIU perspective, and from other players who are in the same industry as you are, I assume it wouldn't be necessarily just a green, environmentally friendly lending, but more focused towards the impact. If that's correct, if it's not, elaborate please more how lending essentially fits into that impact financing aspect of the terminology.
Right. So a lot of the work we do is around develop communities, regions, even sectors, right? So when we talk about, you're right, it's less about green, although we've done some green projects in fish farming, for instance, in the Mekong Delta. Are the farms complying? Are they using chemicals? Is it leaking into the Mekong River? And ultimately the outputs, like the fish, can we track and trace them and make sure that it's the quality and standards that like the FDA and the USDA is looking for? But ultimately, our impact is really around job creation, communities growing, and is doing well. And so we really look at the sectors and even communities that need more financing to grow their businesses and ultimately grow their communities when we choose where we're going to work and how we're going to work.
Steve, just brief follow-up question on that. Considering you are in credit scoring from the impact perspective, would you consider and would you say that both statements are true or just one of them is true? Is KIU the example of impact investment? That means investors investing into KIU and helping you to execute your business strategy towards impact or impact finance? Is impact investment itself, or you are one of, or your company is part of the driving tool towards the impact investment and impact financing?
Right, and I think honestly both. So I think we would be considered a social enterprise, obviously with a for-profit focus because of sustainability. So I think it's both. Our investors and our partners are actually also more concerned about the impact to the environment, impact to social, and obviously financial outcomes. But at the same time, in a lot of the cases when we're actually financing or working with bank partners to finance some of the supply chains, for instance, or even fish processors and fish farmers, we make sure it's really mean that we're boxes from the SDG goals and looking at it that way. For me personally, as the founder and CEO, those elements, because I've been involved in impact for so long and sustainability, I really make sure that we're complying. The other part of it is the Dutch Growth Fund is also one of our investors or supporters, ADB, World Bank. So we have to comply with ESG, right? So environmental, sustainable, and our social and governance. So we're both sides of that.
Thank you. David, you are kind of a blend of all the industries here, from both EMC and Harvest too. Why I was asking so much about credit and lending, it's because slowly we'll start shifting towards the fintech as well. In your experience, in your examples, how would you say that you are positioned in that green sustainable impact finance, and how technology investments you making are involved and intertwined with the terminology and with the topic?
Okay, good. Long question. Let me think. So I would perhaps start off with about how we look at the sustainability issue, and bring together what Artak mentioned, what Steve just mentioned, and John. So for us, it's like really simple. We look at sustainable finance, which is what our Harvest 2 project provides in the form of grants or and other support. It's really very simple. It's a mechanism of allocating capital to private companies, so private investors, and they're going to use it to invest to achieve two things. First of all, they want to grow their business and be profitable, which is what Steve just mentioned. Because if you're not profitable, you can't achieve the second thing, which is the defining characteristic of social sustainable finance, which is social returns, so benefit for the broader society. And so that's what we look for. Harvest 2, in terms of our financing activities, is much smaller scale than what John is doing at USAID Green Invest Asia. Our principal mechanism, we have two mechanisms basically. One is we provide grants. I'm very proud to have a recipient of one of our grants on the call, which is Steve. And then we also do help clients that we work with get finance. The way we involve principles of sustainable finance in that is really at the front end in terms of client selection. We're looking for clients who have business models which will generally generate positive social benefit. In common with a lot of dev sector projects, the primary lens is probably social, looking quite specifically at employment outcomes in rural areas. That's one of the key areas we want to go and achieve. But we also look at other broader factors. So when we look at digital finance, obviously we're interested in increasing financial inclusion, and digital finance is a great way of achieving that. Did that answer your question, Thomas?
I think so. I think I asked too many in one, but you gave it back to me. You gave me all-encompassing answer. I would like to ask and point it first towards our UNDP gentleman here, starting with Panya and then towards Artak. Let's try to limit it to 3 to 5 minutes max each, so we can then move to other question. We touched a little bit based on FinTech, and I think both of you from global perspective as well as Cambodian perspective here, how do you think that FinTech is linked to green sustainable impact finance? And if you already perhaps work with certain projects where you see the FinTech and outcoming financial inclusion is important for you and areas you're working on. Panya, can you start?
Yeah, thank you. When it comes to money and technologies combined together, these are the two powerful forces that would make such an impact to anything that we're working with. So here in Cambodia, when we launch the incubation programs and build all of these businesses, and we actually did not use the words that, we are incubating social enterprise or businesses for a specific SDG, but we are more talking about incubating business as a good force, and that as a digital business focus as well, FinTech is a major part in all of these businesses. Let me give an example of how can we use a digital payment and digital platform to support all of this business that we are incubating at the moment when they start launching their service and product in the market. One of our entrepreneurs is building a telehealth and digital consultations with the doctors. And the question is that with all of this digital support and digital businesses, but then we also serving a number of customer and patients that may not have access to digital wallets or credit cards. So an alternatives and inclusive finance and leveraging FinTech technologies that can transferring from a cash economy or cash society into either digital wallets or either through a mobile payment or credit system that enabling those customers to also receive all of this new digitally business and services that are able to provide to them. And without this kind of bridge and a consideration of inclusiveness, then the business that actually creating to tackle all of this issue that we are seeing in our society only is going to go to a very a small percentage, and probably maybe just end up in an elite group rather than a scale for everyone. So this is actually the example that we're seeing and doing here in Cambodia, and I think Artak would be able to add more on the global perspective.
Artak, sorry, you are on mute. And prior you answered just a little bit of specification towards the FinTech. As we discussed yesterday, you pointed towards the FinTech and data and green data. And we were talking about, is it really right positioning of FinTech as cross-industry, cross-disciplinary tool? And how the green data would be used in impact finance, in sustainable finance? I guess it's all mixed together, so maybe you can provide a little bit more clarity towards it.
Well, yes, definitely, Thomas. But before speaking about that, let me say that in UN system and UNDP specifically, we even expanded the concept of FinTech into something what we call a digital finance. And when we speak about digital finance, this is not only relevant to private sector, but also public sector, because we do see that this concept of digital finance would actually help us to resolve the overall information asymmetry around, I would say, targeting the cost of searching and making those investments which are targeting sustainability and inclusive economic growth. See, that is why we tried to expand it so that we can lower the cost, increase transparency, improve access to information related to those type of investments or financing tools, right? And again, we believe that this concept helps improve citizen participation, improves the financial value chain, even unlocks some new type of sustainable business model. See, what we do actually, we distinguish two groups of solutions in FinTech. The one set of solutions targeting what we call BOP, bottom of pyramid, vulnerable groups, or in a banking terminology, unbanked or underbanked ones, both individuals and micro or small enterprises. So here, through those tools, we are targeting financial access, financial inclusivity. We actually try to even go farther from the concept of inclusivity to financial prosperity, because again, inclusivity is not the outcome. It is the way towards the ultimate outcome, which has to be prosperity, right? And when we have another set of solutions, which is there for, we say, the big ones, right? The companies, corporates, infrastructures, regulators, policymakers, those are the FinTech solutions which are trying to factor the concept of impact or sustainability into a set of financial tools and services. Now, again, if we come back to this aspect of the FinTech solutions for on a retail market, an impact fintech solutions or green fintech solutions. Here we speak about all sort of alternative credit reporting, credit management, micro and even nano fintech, micro leasing, micro insurance, telco lending. We speak about payments and remittances. We have done many projects addressing these issues, especially in very sort of vulnerable areas. And here we look at such concepts as alternative money, mobile money, cryptocurrencies, or even tokens. We look at the financial tools for micro enterprises, some sort of and it could include everything. It could be alternative trade finance as cutting edge as smart contracts, but it could be more basic sort of platforms such as e-commerce platforms, which was quite important in COVID-19 settings. We also speak about personal finance applications, again, for what we call, underbanked and unbanked population. However, that does not exclude the big guys, as I said. So here we speak about these solutions for, I would say, sustainable business decision making. Sort of it's a way of tracking sustainability, managing the sustainable supply chain, or factoring the natural capital cost. This is another sort of term that I'm using related to sustainability. This could be a set of tools for regulators in terms of, let's say, taxation incentives, introducing this concept of double or triple line reporting, right? Compliance aspects. This could be a tools which help us to structure this impact factored financial tools, such as sort of based on sustainability rating systems, impact measurement and management, indexing connected with impact, and coming to, also the security issues in terms of identification algorithms, biometrics, etc. But coming to the last part of your question about the big data, right? So this is also very interesting because we do see some interesting convergences when we are putting together non-finance and finance data. And when we speak about non-finance data, that could relate to weather, solar, off-grid systems, social networks, etc. We supported this venture, which has a very interesting solution where we analyze the data from a satellite, satellite imagery to analyze how good is that land lot, agricultural land lot, in terms of the potential crops, related risks, and we use also the weather data, and when translate that data into a credit risk, which when is translated into a financial product. And we are extending that financial product to a farmer. So we approach to the farmer or landowner with a specific financial product just based on the data from a satellite regarding that land lot. And again, this is a cutting edge product, and again, it has been developed actually somewhere in Europe, but it is applied now in Africa and Latin America on the crops related to cocoa and coffee. So this is an example of how you can use that data and combine it with financial data and structure a financial product which is impact oriented. So, and when you are also shortening the link between the source of the capital and the actual farmer, and the actual market. So this is one of those examples of how that could be done.
Thank you, Artak. Gentlemen, more and more I'm listening to you. It essentially showcases same thing what I am saying from private sector and fintech perspective. It is interconnected. It is interdisciplinary, cross-industry subject matter. I would want to challenge all of us, because I think that we have 10-15 minutes left, to probably comment towards one question. And I always say fintech is everything. In your descriptions, sustainable, green, sustainable finance, ESG essentially, but let me add one I there, and ESIG, so with that impact putting into it, can we split it, or does it need to be together? You know, is it realistic to expect that 2021, 2022, always this one will go hand to hand, or is it too revolting to say first we need to focus on social impact versus purely environmental impact, or is it always going to be environmental social impact together? Is it realistic to expect that everything will happen at fast, or simply we starting investing into solutions and efforts such as this whole encompassing topic, because we know that if we don't do it now, 5-10 years from now it will be too late. John, maybe let's start with you.
Okay, Thomas. Yeah, thanks. It's an interesting one. I mean, I tend to think less about the terminology. I guess, I mean, the taxonomy and how you define what is green is definitely important. And I think I can see a clear role potentially for like the UN in helping developing a clear kind of green taxonomy for what is green and impact. I think that does need to be agreed upon across, let's call it, the ASEAN markets where we see it happening in Europe. I think that'd be helpful for investors to have a clear and agreed set of guidelines. I don't think we're going to work it out here and now, but I think there's a role for leadership in that space to arrive on a uniform set of terminology just to clear it up a bit. I mean, when it comes to FinTech and Cambodia and the opportunity, the thoughts that pop into my head is like when it comes to digital platforms for things like remittances and payments, I'm very comfortable with that, and I think it's growing well, and we're seeing a lot of social benefits there. When it comes to ideas like credit scoring and digital lending, I think there's a lot of positive. There's a lot of positive activity in there, but it does give me more cause for caution. One of the things I think about when I think through the lens of Cambodia is that credit scoring by itself and some of these and fintech platforms are designed to increase access to lending more easier. One of the risks, and it'll be a little bit controversial here, but one of the risks I think people need to think about and consider in all of this work is around the impact of kind of turbocharging easier credit into vulnerable and already indebted communities in Cambodia. I think it could be a risk. So we talk about ESG. I think the governance of the E and the environmental and social, the G means governance, right? So having some kind of parameters around ensuring there is a social impact protection in place, because with these products, will they get online gambling? Will it be easier? Will this increase vulnerability if we just keep turbocharging this money into communities? An impact I can talk to, like in Cambodia, and this is real and it's happened in the past, is you could talk about it through the micro lending, and it's not even the over indebtedness of that through the MFIs, but specifically in the past, capital providers have forced outcomes at a business level. Gender is a good example in Cambodia. People talk about the need to increase gender diversification. In Cambodia, 85% of the women absorb all the microfinance loans because it's been pushed by development partners in the past, the need to prioritize gender. So you have 85% of the women of this country fronting the loans and are basically absorbing all the debt, right? And MFI partners will only lend to the female, so they don't utilize the capital, but they front the loans. Because this has been a well-intentioned effort in the past, but the pendulum swung quite heavily. So it's a real risk in these countries, and there's unintended consequences that can come out of well-intended efforts around how do you configure organizations or disperse capital and direct it in certain ways. The unintended consequences are here when you look at the gender disparities and who wears the debt in this country, right? So I think I would only summarize saying with FinTech, when it comes to lending and credit scoring, there needs to be some kind of mechanism to ensure that there are social protection mechanisms in place, because, particularly worried about gambling, and the ease of that, because it could be quite a challenge for society down the track. So FinTech, great, but I think we need to have some caution around it. And I'll stop there.
Oh, thank you, John. Okay, why don't we go for David, because he might have similar perspective and add on top of John's.
I was just looking for the mute button. I certainly agree with what John said, and I think Steve has a lot to go talk about in that subject, so I will skip that, other than to say that certainly agree with the risks. In terms of other opportunities in Cambodia, certainly agriculture is a large important segment for Cambodia. In terms of environmental, social, governance compliance, it's some way behind the frontier, which means that though difficult, there's a great scope for improvement. Agriculture in Cambodia is obviously an export-orientated, is an export product. Cambodia is a small country, highly export-focused. So eventually the exposure of the Cambodian agricultural exporters to markets like Europe, North America and other places could act as a lever to go and incentivize better ESG performance. And we see some signs of that with companies like Amru Rice, and there are others. I just mentioned those as they're quite well known here. For an agriculture company that wants to demonstrate high ESG standards and access the funding that's available, obviously FinTech or digital tech will play a key role. If you want to demonstrate compliance in your supply chain, what better way to go and hook up all the SMEs in your supply chain via a solution such as Q, or to have a traceability app running to your farmers so you can demonstrate compliance and also add value to your product when you export it to a sophisticated market, because you can demonstrate that it is organic, you can demonstrate exactly where it's come from, you can demonstrate compliance with social and environmental safeguarding. So that would be one example. Obviously, manufacturing in Cambodia, which is broadly speaking the garment sector, similarly export-oriented. So you've got the same kind of levers there. If you can hook them up to supply chains where the end customer or the end consumer values compliance with environmental, social and governance safeguarding. There's been quite a lot of work in that area. In terms of the application of tech, you're looking at stuff like energy efficiency on the manufacturing process, which in Cambodia, huge opportunity to go and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And in terms of compliance, other technologies, leveraging Internet of Things and that kind of stuff. So there's a couple of other ideas in addition to banking and finance, but in summary, I agree with what John said also.
Thank you, David. Steve and Artak, Panya, they already from studio, they pointing to me that we will soon have to wrap up, but I still want to give each of you at least a minute, so let's stop watch it for yourself. What do you think? Are you gonna, from your perspective, separate those efforts, or are you already ready to focus on those all three elements, from environment, social to impact and governance? Are we there? And what will be your next year onward looking based on this?
Yeah, so it's okay. So I have opinions on this, but so I tell you, like when I started off in impact investing, we had two categories. It was double bottom line and then triple bottom line, because there wasn't really this convergence of a social and environmental that went together well. Companies who were socially focused and the environmental included social. So it didn't really work so well. You know, John brought up the necessity of terminology around what's impact investing. And again, I've been in it so long, and we've flogged what is impact investing for so long, and no one's ever agreed. So I agree that someone's got to take the baton and create the terminology. But more importantly, if you're social, and it comes to the automated credit scoring, and with all due respect to John, because I value his opinion, it's just like in the US, is it the gun that's killing people, or is it the person that's killing people, right? And it's not automated credit scoring that's killing and creating over-indebtedness. It's the company, number one, and what are their values and their ethics, right? Number two is it's the scoring algorithms and the scorecards And then lastly, the alternative is they go to the loan sharks. And I agree with you. I think peer-to-peer lending is probably the most dangerous fintech on the planet because it's unregulated, it's high interest rates, they're willing to spill out money without really any kind of analysis or risk or compliance. And it's a big issue. It's a big issue. We're starting to see suicide. We're starting to see fingers cut off, those things that we hear from the mafia lending. But ultimately, it comes down to having some kind of standards around, triple bottom line, double bottom line, around the ethics and the morals of the company that's operating and doing the credit scoring and lending. I mean, that's where I think a lot of the regulation needs to be done. And no offense to John, because I agree with him, but I have a different view.
Thank you, Steve. I actually wish we have 2 more hours. It's just starting to be interesting, and we have 2.5, 3 minutes. So, Panya, your comments towards the end, please.
Thank you. I think I liked all the opinions that was sharing before this, but I think at the end of the day, for all of us to achieve the well balance between environments and social impacts and governance all together, it's really the effort for us to strengthen the public and private sectors partnership and collaboration. We see a lot of those examples more towards the infrastructures, but yet not yet enough into fintechs or impact investments and inclusive financings. So all of this could risk to minimize the negative impacts to households, to women that get the loan and the credit from microfinance. It could minimize if the private sectors and the public sector were having all of these dialogues and having all this future scenario prediction all together. So I think we have a good lesson learned from what we did in the past. So if we take that and reflect it to what we want to achieve today's and tomorrow's, that would give us a really good solid foundation into achieving a much more balance between environments, social impacts, and governance all together. So I would like to leave with the last comment was saying that the private sectors have to step up and the public sectors also needs to pull the private sectors to work and collaborate together. So it's not just about regulating the business and taking tax, but it's also how to incentivize and encourage the private sectors to come and investing in all of these sectors as well. And the private sectors, vice versa, also to make it much more smoothly for the governments to work with them as well. Yeah.
Artak,
back to you, Tom.
Thank you, Panya. Artak, 1 minute, try.
Yeah, thanks, Thomas. It's a bit provocative question. I don't know whether you checked my resume or not, but before shifting to the United Nations to the bright side, I was a senior VP of Dun & Bradstreet and set up 12 credit bureaus in 12 different countries. So at the dark side, I was in that business before coming to UN. But now, answering to your question, no, you should not separate it, because that is where you are heading to the problem. The moment you start looking at that separately, this is where you are diverting from this concept of holistic impact measurement, and this is where you start seeing the problems. And this relates not only to finance or financial inclusion, though we have seen that also happening there. Microfinance would be one of those very sort of apparent examples how wrong it could be, and especially in Southern Asian countries where we see a couple of villages entirely, the whole village is absolutely indebted towards a microfinance organization, and people need to be saved. We have seen such cases, and it's not only about the finance. There are many other, I would say, development areas that where either a technology or a business model was introduced with the purpose to produce an impact, but because only part of that was considered, ultimately it resulted in something wrong. Look at affordable housing projects, right? Initially it was, yes, nice, we have so many families getting the roof, etc. But in 10, 20 years, look at what has happened in Western countries. those were become a ghetto type of settings, or simple things, the PET bottles, plastic bottles. When we introduced, it was, oh, this is a solution towards environmental issues. We are not going to spend any more energy on producing the glass bottles, etc. In 20 years, 25 years, it became an environmental disaster. Why? Because we were looking at the impact only in one sort of dimension, missing all the others, and we were looking at the impact in very short term. That is why in my first concept I said we try to shift away from this concept of financial inclusivity towards financial prosperity and look at the concept much more holistically, considering all sort of relationship and connections between different aspects of activities and impact. Over.
Thank you, Artak. Gentlemen, I really appreciate this session. I so wish that this one wasn't a 60-minute session, but not even 2 hours. As Donald said, maybe we needed a day or few days. I definitely think that myself and audience coming from this session a little bit smarter, but as well a little bit more confused with tons of Googling to do. So I thank you for that. Thank you for keeping us busy and audience as well. And I hope that this one is, again, the opening session of future collaboration between both public and private institutions towards this impact, sustainable and green finance. So thank you, gentlemen. Have a good evening, and please stay in touch. I'm sure that this discussion will pick up, and we will have many more topics in similar festivals to go. Have a nice evening and stay safe.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have now reached the end of the program, and thank you once again for joining us today. But before that, we would like to announce the very lucky person who winning away a smartphone with pre-installed Bakong app and other FinTech apps. អរគុណស្រីអ្នកនាងកញ្ញាអរគុណសម្រាប់ការតាមដានទស្សនានៅការផ្សាយផ្ទាល់នៃព្រឹត្តិការណ៍ World FinTech Festival ចាឥឡូវនេះយើងបានបញ្ចប់សម្រាប់ការផ្សាយផ្ទាល់ហើយក៏ប៉ុន្តែចានាងខ្ញុំក៏សូមប្រកាសជូននៅចាអ្នកដែលមានសំណាងជាងគេចាអ្នកដែលឈ្នះនៅរង្វាន់ធំចានោះគឺចាទូរស័ព្ទ smartphone មួយរង្វាន់ចាពីកម្មវិធីរបស់យើងចាដឹងថាតើអរលោកអ្នកដែលចូលរួមទស្សនានិង comment ហើយបាន share ហើយមានសំណាងជាងគេនៅក្នុងការផ្សាយផ្ទាល់ថ្ងៃនេះដែលជាថ្ងៃទី3នោះបានទៅលើអស់លោកអ្នករូបណាមួយអូខេនេះខ្ញុំសូមប្រកាសជូនតែម្ដងចាសូមទៀងស្ដាប់ទាំងអស់គ្នាគឺបានទៅលើឈ្មោះចាសុថារតសូម wow congratulations អូពិតជាមានសំណាងមែនតើចាលោកស្រីនាងកញ្ញា and once again ladies and gentlemen please don't forget to share our live broadcast for a chance to win $10 cell card top-up balance or a smartphone. And tomorrow we will have a new hashtag. Please write that on the comment section for a chance to win $5 cell card top-up balance. Also, stay tuned in the comment section to get free cell card top-up balance in every 5 minutes. Finally, just to remind everyone that this event is powered by the National Bank of Cambodia, Real Stability Development, the Association of Banks in Cambodia, the Cambodian Association of Finance and Technology, and Bakong, the next generation mobile payments and banking. We also like to thank our partners and sponsors, our main sponsors, Pulse by Prudential Yaw, AI-powered wellness partner. Download now. And our exclusive telco partner, Cellcard, proudly Khmer. Well, to our brand sponsors, through Money, we enable everyone to access innovative financial services leading to better lives. AMK, Microfinance PSC, finance at your doorstep. CBC, Credit Bureau, Cambodia. Wing, Cambodia's leading mobile banking services provider. And Accelerator Bank, bank you can trust, the bank for people. And of course, thanks to Canada Bank. And to our member sponsors, My Enterprise, a unit under the Ministry of Economy and Finance. KB Daehan Specialized Bank PLC, your new highway in finance. EasyCom, Cambodia's premium internet provider. J-Trust Royal Bank, simply better service. E-Money, payment solutions, easy and safe. And also thanks to PPC Bank. Well, to our media partners, thanks to Sabai, happiness lives here. And also to Quantum Endorphin Digital. Well, once again, guys, just to remind everyone that we will be live until Friday. So please continue to join and support us as we offer and provide you with more informative live sessions and also more exciting prizes. Stay tuned. And so please don't forget to share our live broadcast and comment during our session, which is very important. Thank you so much once again. See you all again tomorrow. Goodbye and cheerio.